make the cutest duck hooded towel. All you need is a towel, a hand towel, felt for the accessory pieces, and you need to go to Belle by Jessi to get your downloadable pattern. That's Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. Download your pattern, print it out, come back here and meet me, and let's sew this adorable duck hooded towel together. Let's start on our duck hooded towel. I have gathered all my supplies. I have my towel, my scissors, my felt, my pattern pieces, and my sewing directions, so I'm ready to get going. So I'm going to take my sewing directions and set them to the side, and the first step that we're going to do is trim out our pattern pieces. Now I do want to point out that your hood is on 2 pieces of paper. It's too big to get printed on 1 piece of paper, so you'll see it split onto 2. There are directions on the pattern piece, but all you're going to do is trim out both of these pieces, and where the dotted line is, you're going to line them up and tape them together so that you have your full pattern piece. So let's get our paper scissors. We'll trim all these out, and before we cut the felt pieces, I want to show you my favorite trick to make cutting little pieces easier. Let's get started. I have all my pattern pieces trimmed out. I'm going to cut the felt first because I want to show you one little trick. Of course, you can take your little pieces. We've got our little duck tuft for the top of its head. Got my yellow felt. I need 2, so I'm going to fold it over. And you can, of course, pin it, as I'm sure you're used to doing with pretty much anything that you cut out at home. I actually come from a production background. I used to be a production pattern maker, and that means that I made the patterns for the factory workers to sew from. And it's a little bit different. So sometimes I do things slightly differently than you might do them at home. So of course you can pin all your pieces as you're used to. That's totally fine. But with these little tiny pieces, sometimes it's hard. So my favorite trick is to get a paper towel and transfer or trace the piece onto the paper towel. Now a regular old paper kind of slides around. Paper towel has a little bit of texture, and it actually will sort of stick to your fabric so it stays put while you're cutting it out. That's one of the tricks I like to use that makes cutting a little bit easier, quicker, and sometimes more precise. So that's what I'm going to do for my very small pieces for my duck eye. You choose what works best for you, but let's cut out our felt pieces. Oh, I do want to tell you one more thing. So normally when we make the duck bill out of orange. There was no orange. So I was not able to buy a square felt in orange, and I looked through my stash at home. I did not already have some orange, so today my duck bill is going to be tan. It happens sometimes. Feel free to substitute as you prefer, or as your materials work out. Doesn't really matter. It's going to be adorable no matter what colors you put together. I have my duck's cute little face and accessories cut out and ready to sew. Now I'm going to find my hand towel, and that's what's going to be the hood of our hooded towel. So you take your pattern piece together, so you have the one piece. You're going to get your hand towel. And frequently they have these little kind of striped designs on the edge that are a different texture depending on your towel. It may be on both sides of your towel or only on one side. So just be aware of that when you're placing and folding your hood, whether you want to incorporate that into your finished towel or not. Generally, I don't like it. So if I have a towel that only has it on one side, I will fold the towel just to the edge of that stripe so it's not even close to my pattern piece. On this particular one, I have it on both sides. So I'm going to fold them together and see if I can cut my hood without it touching that. Now, I've got to make my hood the size it is, so we'll see. But anyway, you're going to fold your hand towel, and then you've got directions on your pattern piece. Over here's the fold. So where we've folded our towel, we want to line this edge up there. And down here on the bottom, we want to put this on the very finished edge of our hand towel. This is already factory finished so that it's not going to ravel. We want to keep that. That's less work for us. So you want to line this edge up down here too. So you're going to use both of those edges. Put that pattern piece right down in the corner. All right, looks like I'm going to get just a little bit of that stripe design in mine. That's okay. It's going to end up getting folded under in the hem, so it's still not going to show on my finished towel. If it did, then oh well, there's a little decoration on my towel. Now, again, you can pin this down like I'm sure you're used to. Another little trick we use in a sample room or in a factory, pretty much I hardly ever pin anything down to cut it. We use weights. They do sell pattern weights that are kind of heavy and metal, and they have a handle on the top. Something I like to use at home that's easier to find are these old irons. They're heavy, they've got a handle. The only thing you have to look out for is make sure when you buy one that this flat part is smooth so that it doesn't tear up or snag your fabric or your pattern piece. But anything heavy will work. A book, your tape dispenser, anything that holds it in place while you trim out, that saves you the time of pinning, so it's a little bit quicker. Let's go sew. Our tuft piece for our duck is 2 pieces. That's just to give it a little bit more body. So we're going to just sew them together so they'll act as one. We're going to edge stitch as close as we can all the way around. No need to stitch the bottom section. If anything ends up not lined up exactly right, feel free to trim it. The nice thing about felt is it doesn't ravel, so we don't need to do anything special to the edges. Next, we're going to get our hood. We had a notch that was just a slit in there. I'm going to open up my hood, find that little slit, which is my notch, and I'm going to put my tuft. You can kind of pick which way you think it'll look better. I'm going to put the short side forward. And you're going to center it right on that notch. Close the hood back up. We'll pin it so it doesn't wiggle around. Oh, if you pin perpendicular to your seam with the head of the pin away from the needle, you can stitch right over it. I don't actually pin all that often, so I just move them. So I'm going to put just a few pins, and don't worry, I will move mine before I get too close to them. Alright, so we're going to stitch and back stitch at each end here. You'll notice your towel is already very ravelly. Don't worry, we're going to cover this seam very quickly. want to cover this raw edge so that it won't ravel anymore. Really, all we need to do is just cover that edge. It doesn't need to look pretty. So we're going to take a little piece of our double fold bias tape, and typically one side is slightly longer than the other side. Now this piece is not actually like that all the way down. It's ironed somewhat inconsistently, but that's okay. But the reason they typically do that is so that you can put the longer side on the bottom. So I'd put the longer side on the bottom, so that as I'm stitching on the top, I have a little extra on the bottom to make sure I'm catching it on both sides. So if yours does have a fold to make it a little bit longer on one side, you want to put that longer side on the bottom. So you can see right here, we're going to just sandwich that raw edge in the middle here, and we're going to go all the way down to encase all that ravelly part of our towel. I'm not going to pin this. Feel free to pin it if you want to. This is going to get covered, so we don't need to do anything on the front end. On this end back here, we're going to pause and take care of the bias tape so that it doesn't ravel either. When I get in a little ways, I like to look and just make sure I'm catching it on the back. It's not beautiful, but that's okay. It's nice and secure, so those ravels are not going to be a problem. When we get almost to the edge, we're going to cut a little tail, not too short, because our bias tape could ravel. We're going to just take our fingers and fold it inside of itself, and then fold it back together so we get those raw edges, even of the bias tape, caught up inside there. So now it's just folds on both ends. So I'm going to stitch all the way to the end of that and back stitch. And looky here, I missed a spot. You see that? So even when you sew for a living, we still make mistakes. Missed it on both sides. So I'm going to stitch over that real quick, make sure I catch it. There we go. Alright, so I fixed my hole. I'm secure all the way on the back, so there's no more raveling here even when it gets washed. So there's our cute little start of our duck hooded towel. Now the front, the face area of our towel also has that cut edge that's going to ravel. So before we sew our beak on, we're going to get the rest of our bias tape. Let me cut a hunk. We're going to go ahead and cover this edge. Same thing we just did. It's going to be a little bit easier now since it's only one ply, but you're going to sew this on top of it to cover that up so that we won't have any more raveling. And again, we want to find that longer side, if you can see that, and we want to put it on the bottom. Oh, I almost forgot. We don't want this to have a raw edge on our bias tape, so we're going to fold that under and then fold it. So if we can see that, we have a fold, and then this is the finished edge of our hand towel that we did not cut, so that's already not going to ravel. And then we're going to go all the way across, do the same thing on the other side. Alright, on this end, I'm going to trim it so I have enough to fold under. Wrap it so there's nothing but finished edges that are going to be on the outside. right, I'm gonna check it, make sure I didn't run off the edge anywhere. All good. So all of our ravelly edges are now finished and closed. We're ready to put our beak on. So same thing as with the little tuft. We have 2 ply just to give it a little bit more body. So we're going to line them up. You can pin them together. And we're going to edge stitch all the way around. Well, you don't have to do the flat side, but all the way around the exposed part. You can check it if anything got a little bit skewed, didn't line up exactly right, feel free to trim it off. It's felt, it won't ravel, so we don't have to worry about any of that. All right, let's attach our beak to our hood. So we're gonna take our beak and we're gonna put it right in the center of our hood. I'm just gonna eyeball. If you wanna measure it, you can. I have gotten it crooked before, so maybe I should measure. There we go. I'm going to pin this so it doesn't shift around while I'm sewing it. Alright, and we're going to stitch our beak just straight across here, back stitch at each end. It's looking cute. All right, now we just want to turn this to the inside and hem it so it'll lay flat. This center now is very thick, so you'll probably have to use your hand wheel to get through all of that slowly. Oh, I broke my thread. Let's try that again. Ready for the eyes, so let's get our eye pieces. We want to line the flat parts up together, and then you can choose if you want your eyes to come in a little bit or if you want them to be centered. I'm going to make mine centered. All right, we're going to edge stitch around the blue part all the way around, completely all the way around this time. I'm using beige thread. I feel like it's going to match close enough. I'm not going to rethread my machine. If you want to change to match, go ahead and do that. And then top stitch the blue onto the white for both eyes. All right, on your hood pattern, you have a placement mark for the eyes, but I prefer actually to wait until I'm at this point and then just put them on and see what visually looks the best. So I'm going to pin my eyes on. I'm just going to eyeball my eyes. I'm going to pin them on and just take a look and sort of tweak them based on what I've actually sewn here. There we go. All right, that looks good to me. I've got my pins in the center so that I can stitch around without removing my pins. I'm going to sew this on the machine because I prefer to do everything on the machine. I hate sewing by hand. However, if you prefer to hand sew this part, do whatever works best for you, but we want to go all the way around, a complete circle, but all the way around the eye on each one to make sure it's fully securely attached to the towel. Our hood's finished. All we have to do now is attach it to the body towel. So get your body towel. Let's see if we can see this on the video. So what I want you to do is fold it in half. So I'm going to line the edges up, and I'm going to find the very center of my towel. Keep it folded for a second. You're going to do the same thing on your hood. Line those edges up, find the center, and I'm going to show you an easy little trick. If you put them together, so we've got our folds lined up here, put your fingers inside of it and open it up. And there you go, you have your hood centered on your towel. So put some pins in here. So it doesn't shift around. Both of these are factory finished edges. We don't have to do anything to them at all. All we're doing is attaching the two pieces together. Now these ends where the hood is attached to the body are going to be stress points. So I'm going to back stitch and then back stitch again to make sure that the ends are very secure and can handle that stress of putting the towel on and taking it off. Now I forgot to point out earlier, I have an industrial machine. So if you're wondering how I'm lifting the presser foot without using my lever down here, I have a knee part. So I can do it without using my hands. There we have it. I had so much fun sewing this duck hooded towel. I hope you did too. Be sure to check out some of my other videos for more DIY projects, or for when you're just too busy to do it yourself. Visit my shop, Belle by Jessi, for lots of ready to ship home decor and holiday items. You can find me here, there, and everywhere online at Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi.
And also like and subscribe. Yeah, so like and subscribe.
Thanks, boys.